Welcome to the podcast of Brothers of Many Words. I am your host, RP.
I am your co-host, King Mackie.
Special guest, King Christopher.
Kings. How are we doing today?
Loving
Wonderful,
life, man.
wonderful, wonderful.
That's right. How's everybody's family doing?
Good,
Fantastic.
good. Yes, had a busy weekend. I'm looking forward to getting home and enjoying the rest of my time.
I bet. I bet. It's a little smoky down here in Texas. A little smoky in Texas today. It was like 91.
Oh wow,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
91 out here.
Oh,
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
dang
I
it,
actually
boy.
got sunburnt yesterday.
Yeah, look, my daughter had to buy a new bathing suit because her other one was too small and she wanted to go to the pool.
Is the pool already open up there?
No, we just, I got a little homemade pool, not homemade, but a little Walmart pool we bought. And it's been
Gotcha.
dusted. It's been in the attic for 6 months.
Right.
So she said, "Pops, it's 91 degrees outside. Can I get in this? Can I get in the pool?" I said, "Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely."
Absolutely. Little positive words this evening to get us kicked off. Promise yourself to be strong, that nothing can disturb your peace of mind. Look at the sunny side of everything and make your optimism come true. Think only of the best, work only for the best, and expect only the best.
Mm,
Forget the mistakes of the past and press on to the great achievements of the future. Give so much time to the improvement of yourself that you have no time to criticize others. Live in the faith that the whole world is on your side as long as you are true to the best that is in you.
mm.
Very good.
I like that.
Yeah,
Absolutely like
very,
that.
very good. Very good. All right. The purpose of the podcast is to have open discussions on various subjects by way of reading books and articles related to the topics picked, which will allow us to discuss, review, debate, and enlighten ourselves along the way, as well as those who wish to join us on this beautiful journey. And as we have said before, the um, topic of the year is Origins of Africa. Origins of Africa. And we have already started this. Oh, no, this is a new book tonight, as a matter of fact. New book tonight. Okay, so get it kicked off real quick, and I'll start it off. And so the first chapter will be over. I'll be discussing the kingdom of Cush. The kingdom of Cush. On that, I have three bullet points for the kingdom of Cush. And my first one will be okay. First bullet point. How did the kingdom of Cush come to be? Before, before Cush existed as a kingdom, the region of Nubia, which is south of Egypt, was home to earlier cultures like the A group and later the C group. The A group dated from around 24 BCE to 1550 BCE and from the late third millennium to the mid second millennium BCE. The A group is characterized by its fine pottery and a semi nomadic lifestyle, while the C group is marked by its distinctive pottery and a more complex social structures. The C group emerged after the A group and was associated with the Old Kingdom of Egypt. These societies were already skilled in agriculture along the Nile, in trade, gold, iron, and ebony, craftsmanship, and metallurgy. Over time, these cultures and organized, laying the foundation for state formation. The kingdom located in what is now northern Sudan emerged from the region of Nubia, which has been inhabited since 8000 BCE. Around 2000 BCE, ancient Egypt expanded southward and conquered Nubia. This had a major impact. Egyptians built forts and controlled trade routes. Nubians were exposed to Egyptian religion, writing, and governance. And local elites adopted and adapted Egyptian culture. This period was crucial. It didn't erase Nubian identity, but it helped shape Kush into a more civilized and powerful state later. The Egyptians were the first to refer to the region as Kush, likely derived from the indigenous term Kasu. During the New Kingdom period, 1550 to 1070 BCE, Much of Nubia came under Egyptian control, but as Egypt began to decline around 1070 BCE, the Kushites capitalized on this weakness. Out of this, Kush rose as an independent kingdom with its first major capital at Napata. This transition marked the beginning of a powerful era for Kush, which lasted until around 3 BCE. The key factors in Kush's rise were the location of Napata near the Nile's fourth cataract, control of the gold mines, which was a major structure of wealth, strategic location of African trade routes, and strong local leadership and identity. So my question for that first bullet point is, why was the location of Napata important to the early growth and power of Kush?
Well, I mean, I think from what I've read, the reason why is access to valuable resources such as gold and ore.
Yeah, access to the Nile, provided water. Yeah, fertile land, and agriculture as well too. Major transportation route.
That's right.
You know,
Yes, all those are.
Even even when it came to that, they weren't. I don't think they did they did trading, but they ran the trade routes. You know what I mean? So they were, which allowed them to connect between, like Africa and Egypt itself, and then also too being having the forest around them made it difficult for them to be invaded. Having a forest around them as well,
Yes,
it made it difficult for them to be
yes,
invaded.
absolutely, absolutely. That's exactly right. All those answers are correct. Okay. Second bullet point. Hold on here. Bullet point is the growth and the height of the Kush kingdom. The growth and peak of the kingdom of Kush tell the story of how a regional Nile Valley culture became one of the most powerful civilizations in the ancient world. After gaining independence from ancient Egypt around 1070 BCE, Kush began expanding its power from its early capital, Atlanta. The key drivers of the kingdom's growth was control of wealth, which were gold and trade. Kush sat on the rich gold wealthiest regions in Africa. It became a major trade hub connecting Central Africa, the Nile Valley, and the Red Sea. Goods traded included gold, ivory, incense, and animal skins. The Nile River allowed for transportation, agriculture, and communication. Kush controlled key trade routes between Inner Africa and the Mediterranean world. Cultural adaptation and strength. Kush adopted elements of Egyptian religion, writing, and kingship, but reshaped them into its own identity. Strong centralized leadership helped unify the region. One second. Okay. The kingdom of Kush reached its in roughly 750 BCE through 650 BCE. When it didn't when it didn't just grow, it dominated. Under powerful rulers like Piye, Kush expanded north and conquered Egypt, creating the 25th dynasty. Kushite kings ruled from Nubia to the Mediterranean. They restored temples and revived Egyptian traditions. They saw themselves as legitimate pharaohs, not outsiders. Another major ruler expanded influence even further and led military campaigns against outside threats like the Assyrians. At its height, Kush was a military power controlling vast territory. It was a religious center, especially devoted to the god Amun. It was a cultural bridge between Inner Africa and Egypt. Key rulers built pyramids, especially Nubia, temples, and monuments in cities that rivaled Egyptian centers. After pressure from foreign invasions, Kush shifted its center south to Meru around 300 BCE. This marked the second peak with a more distinct African identity. Kush advanced iron production. Meroe became a major iron center. They developed the Maoretic script, which is an ancient writing system used by the kingdom of Meru, which is now Sudan. Kush expanded Kush expanded trade with sub-Saharan Africa, and beyond. So, my question with this is, how did control of gold and trade routes contribute to the rise and expansion of the Kingdom of Kush?
Yeah, they controlled it. Yeah, they controlled it. They controlled the routes linked to Central Africa, Egypt, and the Mediterranean world. So that's a lot of influence on that, and a lot of power over that in general.
Sure.
Definitely. I mean, um, in my opinion, it allowed them necessary wealth and access to trade routes to further their power, influence. You know, to the gain that helped them gain more power and influence, and they were also able to um, gain more allies with those trade routes, having access to that area.
Definitely.
It's almost like the current events going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. 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 Outstanding answers. Okay. Bullet point number 3: the decline and fall of the Kush kingdom. The decline of the kingdom of Kush was not caused by a single event. It was a gradual process shaped by environmental strain, shifting trade networks, and internal pressure. After centuries of strength, especially during its height, ruling ancient Egypt, Kush entered a slow decline, particularly during its later phase centered at Meru. Meru became a major center for iron production, which required large amounts of wood for charcoal. Over time, this likely led to deforestation, reducing agricultural productivity, available resources. Overuse, overuse of the land led to soil exhaustion.
Hmm.
Environmental changes, including climate shifts affecting agriculture, made it difficult to sustain the economy and population. Cush's wealth depended heavily on trade such as gold, ivory, and iron. Over time, trade routes began to shift. More trade moved toward the Red Sea and away from the Nile corridor. This reduced Cush's economic influence and revenue. Through external pressures, the invasion through faced pressure from neighboring groups and emerging powers around 350 BCE. The kingdom was defeated, most likely by the rising kingdom of Ascom. The ruler often associated with this is Izana, whose hold on, bear with me here, whose inscription suggests military campaigns into Kushite territory. Cities were weakened and abandoned. Political authority collapsed, and the kingdom fragmented and disappeared as a united state. Kush didn't vanish; his people and cultural influences continued in the region. However, urban centers declined. Writing systems like Mayortic were eventually lost, which is still not fully deciphered today, and power shifted to new regional cultures and kingdoms. So, my question for this third bullet point is, how did the environmental factors such as deforestation and resource depletion in Meru contribute to the decline of the kingdom of Kush?
I think the biggest factor for the environmental side was they lost a lot of wood and they weren't able to power their
Hmm.
forges. A lot
Yeah,
of blacksmiths wasn't able to create their ore,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
they slowly declined. Their wealth went down.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Soil became less fertile.
Hmm.
When you talk about a less food, weaker population, less resources,
Hmm.
weaker military and economy, you know.
Hmm.
So, and then it also made them vulnerable
Sure.
to be because that was one of the things that kept them, a little safer was the forest
Hmm.
itself.
They're kind of like a slow burn.
Yeah, yeah.
That that's a that's a that I didn't realize, but because I'm not very familiar with agriculture, but that soil exhaustion, is really a big deal. Like
Hmm.
I didn't realize that if
Hmm.
you don't, like you pick a spot, you can't just keep planting and planting year after year after year. You have to pick another spot and give the other one a rest. So that one can, I didn't realize that, but that is absolutely a tremendous deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually our problem today with the monocrops, and there's some scientists that estimate we may only have around like 55 or 60 harvests left.
Oh wow.
Really.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
And
Yeah,
this
I believe it.
veganism is one of the prime factors for these monocrops, and also all the grain that the government subsidizes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Wow. So when you say that, you mean like in all totality and farming for the USA?
Yeah, and even in the USA, when you think about all the monocrops, I mean, we grow a lot of corn. A lot of our
Hmm.
grain is subsidized here in the states, and I mean, they just grow corn
Wow.
over and over, and we don't have
Hmm.
people really more don't rotate their crops. I mean, there is some ranchers out there that's trying to do regenerative agriculture,
Right.
Hmm.
and that's the way to do it. You know, you
Right.
grow different crops, bring the livestock back on. I mean, it's a whole thing. We
Right.
can't do all carnivore or all veganism. The system requires a balance, and we've
It
lost that
does. Yeah.
because it goes for the market instead of what's healthy.
Well, I wonder how much of that has been affected since, with the implementation of the mass deportations, because there was, a lot of those farmers that were in the, as they say, that what is it, the Midwest, that is particularly for that. They lost a lot of their uh, their uh, their workers, so to speak. So I wonder if that plays a part into that, along with towards everything that you're saying.
Hmm.
I don't think Missouri has a lot of those workers. Iowa grows a lot of corn, and when it comes to
Hmm.
corn and soybeans, we don't really have workers out there picking there anymore. It's giant combines going through the fields,
Mm.
collecting all them corns and soybeans. But when it comes to the fruit, down in California,
Hmm.
yeah,
Right.
that's more common down there for
Yeah.
people pickers.
Yeah.
Right, 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 right. Those are my three bullet points on the kingdom of Kush.
Right on, man.
All, all right, brothers. I am doing chapter 2, the land of Punt. Okay. So I want to give a summary. In ancient Africa, Captivity Guide to Ancient African Civilization, the chapter on the land of Punt explores one of the most mysterious and wealthy regions known to the ancient world, especially to ancient Egypt. Punt is often called the land of the gods in the Egyptian records. While the exact location is still debated, most historians believe it was somewhere along the Red Sea coast, likely in areas modern day Somalia or eastern Sudan. Okay. So my first bullet point is number one, a major trade partner of Egypt. Punt was not conquered by Egypt. It was respected trade partner. Egyptians sailed long distance along the Nile and sea to reach Punt, bringing back highly valuable goods, valuable resources. Number two, Punt was rich in rare and luxury items, including gold, myrrh, frankincense, ebony, ivory, and exotic animals like baboons. These goods made Punt extremely important to Egyptian religion and economy. Number three, famous expedition. Well, you know what? Excuse me. I should have said my first and did my question, but I didn't. So let me go ahead and go to my third bullet point. So number three, famous expeditions of Hatshepsut. One of the most well-known journeys to Punt was led during the reign of Hatshepsut, a powerful female pharaoh. Her expedition is recorded in detail, carving out her temple, showing peaceful trade rather than war, highlighting Punt as a land of wealth and cooperation. So, my first question is mystery and evidence. Why do you think the exact location of the land of Punt is still debated? Also, what types of evidence, agriculture, written, environmental, would help historians finally confirm its location?
Yeah, I don't know, because the chapter was so short, it's like there wasn't very much on that. So and from what I've read outside of that, it is a mystery to where they have not been able to pinpoint exactly where
Hmm.
that is. But to everything you just read, there's definitely some major significance to the land of Punt, and
Right. Oh,
especially
yes.
in relation to Egypt. But that's
Hmm.
I'm not really sure about that. It's not a whole bunch of, at least not a whole. a whole lot of archaeological evidence that has been found as of yet to
Right.
pinpoint where Punt may be located.
No, you're right, man. That's the reason why the chapters are short, because they don't have much information
Hmm.
on Punt, and the information they do have seems to be only coming from stories of people's travels and not a lot of
Hmm.
actual factual history.
Hmm.
And maybe purely speculative, but maybe Egypt was trying to keep that location private.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think there's a couple different things. I know they found some fur in Egypt, and they ran a DNA test on it, and it showed them, or it told them, that this monkey had come from Somalia. So that's one reason why they're saying Somalia might have been Punt at one particular time. And then, like Chris mentioned, some of the stories, and there's a stela. So the stela bears an inscription stating that if it rains in the mountain of Punt, the Nile floods. That would mean that the that um, they're saying the mountains of Punt could have been in Ethiopian highlands. So I mean, there is some um archaeological resource or information on that. Also, too, the dumb plum plant also grows over in Somalia, which was part of the trade as well too. um so there are a few factors on that. So anyway, now going to question number two: trade versus conquest. So Egypt often conquered other lands, but not Punt. What does this suggest about Punt's power, resources, or strategic importance compared to the regions, or compared to other regions, I would say?
Well, I think Punt was considered very sacred religiously to Egypt.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
also, I believe the land of Punt had a lot of the special spices they needed for rituals, like frankincense and myrrh.
Right,
And I think
right,
that was really important for their religious practices and rituals.
right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree with yeah, so I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I was waiting on you. Go ahead.
Everything that Chris just said, I was going to mention that as well. The land of the gods. So they were, as we know, Egyptian or Egypt itself was very religious. They
Hmm.
took their deities very seriously, and to all the trade. And I didn't know what ebony was, but it is a beautiful piece of wood, and that
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
you know stuff is magnificent. So just all the trade, and so they valued to everything Chris just said, in the trade and whatnot. Those things were very significant back then. And so,
Hmm.
if those trade routes and whether on land or sea were cherished, and they did their best to protect those.
Right, right, right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All good answers. All good answers. All right. And number three: culture and religious impact, which Chris had already just mentioned it, but we'll go ahead and ask the question. How did Punch resources, especially incense like myrrh, shape religious practice in ancient Egypt? Can a trade partner influence another civilization's belief?
I think so. I think though, because you mentioned about the incense and myrrh, so they burn those,
Hmm.
through their
Hmm.
when they were worshiping their deity. So, and that
Hmm.
stuff was very special to them. So
Right.
certainly if that was the only place that they could be acquired, there's absolutely no doubt back then, because it's like the world was small back then, and especially in that area was a whole bunch of places that you could acquire such things. And so I'm sure they was much that relationship was very much valued.
Right.
Also, the Hebrews in their religious practices, they use frankincense and myrrh as well.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
they
Right.
were around at that time practicing and using those spices.
Right, right, right. Okay. And then I add on to that. In addition, a trade partner can absolutely influence a civilization's belief. In this case, Punt didn't just supply goods; it helped shape Egyptians' practices and religion, and they understood the divine. So, as you guys already said, just added on to that. So, but brothers, that is it for me for chapter two, Kingdom of Punt.
Very good.
Right
Very
on,
good.
man. So I got chapter 3, Carthage, and we'll start with my first topic. Carthage Carthage's power structure and strategic weakness. It's the 6th and 5th century BCE to 3rd century BCE. Carthage, between roughly the 6th and 3rd centuries BCE, was one of the most powerful economic forces in the Mediterranean. They dominated trade routes, expanded into regions like Sardinia, parts of Sicily, and they also built a system centered around commerce, but not conquest. Their government structure is key to understanding their long-term weakness. Carthage was not a unified military state like Rome was. It was governed primarily by family oligarchies, wealthy merchant families and elites who controlled all political decisions. These were elected officials bought by the citizens of Carthage and also their council of elders. But the real power stayed concentrated among the elite class and wealthy. That directly influenced how Carthage operated. Instead of building a strong citizen army, Carthage relied heavily on mercenaries, hired soldiers from across the Mediterranean. That decision wasn't random. It aligned with their priorities, which was to protect trade, minimize risk to their own citizens, and maintain economic stability. But over time, that created a massive vulnerability because when war became prolonged or difficult for Carthage, they lacked unity in command, loyalty within their forces, and full commitment from leadership. And we see this early in conflicts like the Battle of Himera at 480 BCE, where Carthaginian forces were defeated and leadership, including the Hamilcar, was lost. Even after that, Carthage remained economically strong, but very militarily cautious.
Right.
And that pattern continued. They often avoided full-scale commitment, choosing diplomacy or economic influence over decisive military actions, even when the situation demanded it.
Right.
So by the time Rome began rising in the 3rd century BCE, the difference was clear that Rome had discipline, was a citizen-based military system, as Carthage had elite control, a profit-driven system with outsourced warfare. And that was the big difference, which would define everything that followed for Carthage. And my first discussion question for this is, do you think Carthage oligarchic system, where wealthy elites controlled decisions, helped protect their power, or ultimately limited their ability to act decisively in war?
I think it was both. I think it was both, because the citizens got to pick the generals that they wanted to have run their military. And so the issue for the generals is they wanted to have their way, but they also realized too they had to answer to the oligarchy system, if you will. So there was that conflict there, and the oligarchs, were very suspicious of who the people picked. So it wasn't like they had these generals were a bunch of yes men. They were not, but there was always that conflict. And so, for me, looking at it from what I know of oligarchs, they certainly are all about protecting their wealth and what they have, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just picking it back off of Robert. The system protected the elites, but in high risk war, it limited Carthage and it enabled their ability to react quickly and fully commit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely their downfall. I mean, there's benefits to doing it the way they did it, but only in the short term, never in the long term.
Right.
And there's no loyalty with them. And whenever something's ran by greed, there's a downfall always going to come.
Sure. And onto that too, from generals out there in a field of battle, that also affects their mindset and the thought process, because it's not like you get to go full bore in what you're planning. You come up with a strategic plan and you get to go do it. In the back of your mind, you're going to have to answer to these oligarchs back there. So if they don't approve, I don't know what the consequences were, but it seems like that would also play probably a major role into why they were limited in what they could and could not do from their standpoint of view.
Definitely, man.
Right.
All right, man. So topic 2, Hannibal and the limits of an oligarch system between 218 and 201 BC. So Hannibal's campaign during the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, is one of the clearest examples of individual brilliance being limited by the political structure. Hannibal Barc, son of Hamilcar, took command after Carthage expanded into Hispania, which is modern Spain, following the First Punic War. In 2018 BCE, he launched his campaign against Rome. Hannibal marched an army of roughly 40,000 to 50,000 troops, including war elephants, across the Pyrenees, through Gaul, and over into the Alps into Italy.
Yep.
Which no one thought was possible.
True.
But from there, he won a series of major battles: Trebia, 218 BCE, Lake Trasimene, 217 BCE, and Canna in 216 BCE. One of the most decisive victories in military history.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Rome had suffered massive losses, but despite their victories, Hannibal never received the level of support needed to finish the war.
Right.
And this is where Carthage government structure becomes critical. Carthage was controlled by oligarch elite, made up of powerful merchant families, and these elites prioritized the trading network, preserving their wealth, avoiding high-risk military investments. So even while Hannibal was in Italy, the ruling class in Carthage did not send any reinforcements to him. They didn't commit at all to invading Rome, but they wanted him to go. They focused all the resources elsewhere, including maintaining control over Iberia and Africa.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't because Hannibal lacked the ability, it was because the political system did not fully support long-term military commitment.
Right.
And in contrast, Rome operated as a republic with strong emphasis on civic duty and military service. Even after devastating losses, Rome rebuilt their armies repeatedly, maintained internal unity, and they stayed committed to total victory. I think that was the big difference between Carthage and Rome.
Right.
I mean, at the time, these were like the two massive world powers, right?
Right.
And so what we see here is a direct contrast. Hannibal is an elite commander with high skills, but with limited backing, while Rome was a system-driven power with constant reinforcement. And over time, systems outlast individuals. Hannibal was out there. He won battle after battle after battle after battle. But that was Rome's. Rome was playing the war of attrition, right? And so he was just trying to basically outlast him, and they did because Hannibal never got reinforcements from Carthage.
Right.
And so Hannibal remained in Italy for over a decade, but without sustained support, he eventually recalled. And in 202 BC, at the Battle of Zama, he was defeated by Scipio Africanus, which is pretty much his equal. But not because he lacked skill. He lost because Carthage was not committed to him at all.
Right.
So my discussion question is, if Carthage had been governed differently, less by the elite interests and more by a unified state commitment, do you think Hannibal could have defeated Rome?
I believe so. But there's a major factor I feel like that plays a role into Rome and Carthage, and it's a matter of fact we learned in our last book. And a lot of the northern African kingdoms actually turned against Carthage, so that was major. That was major for Carthage. I mean, I know their system was a little depleted and they lacked consistency, but at the same time, I don't think Rome could have did it without the other northern African kingdoms turning on Carthage in order to be kind of self-sustainable.
Yeah. But really, at first, I mean, Hannibal actually got a lot of those people to allied on his side, and that's why he was actually to outlast for so long, because he lost a lot of his troops, and he was able to gain a lot of allies.
Right.
But then those allies eventually turned on him.
They sure did.
I think he absolutely had a great shot defeating Rome. Listen, when he started out and they were recognizing what he was doing, and he landed on Camino there. They were scared,
right.
And he as you had mentioned, the war of attrition, he was losing his troop and he was waiting on reinforcements, but he didn't realize what was going on back home. He
Right.
got the Gauls he made an alliance with the Gauls, which supplied him with 20,000 troops. Now, had he got those reinforcements, it could be a whole different ball game.
Right.
He was, very, very, very smart. And as you mentioned, Scipio Africanus was definitely his equal. Had he had the force that he needed, we'd probably be having a different conversation. It certainly would. He had a good shot. He had a good
Right.
shot at succeeding.
Right.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think Hannibal would definitely, if Carthage would have got organized and backed him,
Yeah.
with the amount of resources Carthage had,
Hmm.
um, and the amount of, I mean, they had a lot of influence at that time. I think they could have 100%. All right, topic 3, last topic. The final decline and destruction of Carthage, 201 to 146 BCE. After the Second Punic War ended in 201 BCE, Carthage was no longer a dominant power. Rome imposed strict terms. Carthage lost its territories outside of Africa. It had to pay heavy war reparations, and it could not
Hmm.
declare war anyone else without Rome's approval. They couldn't even protect themselves without the approval of Rome. For
Right.
a period, Carthage actually recovered economically, though. Hannibal became a political leader and introduced reforms to reduce corruption and improve financial stability. But Rome remained cautious and increasingly hostile. By 151 BCE, Carthage had finished paying its debts to Rome. Around that same time, conflicts with Numidia escalated. When Carthage defended itself without Roman approval, Rome used this as a justification to act against them. And then 149 BCE, Rome declared the Third Punic War. And this war was very different from the last two because Carthage was weakened. They didn't have a strong military. They were by themselves with no allies, and they had very limited resources. And Rome just launched a full siege on the city. And over the
Right.
course of 3 years, Carthage resisted, but ultimately it couldn't hold. In 146 BCE, Roman forces broke through, and the outcome was absolute total destruction. The city was burned, 50,000 survivors were enslaved, and the Carthaginian state was completely dismantled. It wasn't about control anymore, it was about elimination. And looking back, the fall of Carthage wasn't caused by one single event. It was the result of long term political structure, the inconsistent military commitment, and failure to adapt to a more disciplined, unified opponent. Rome didn't just defeat Carthage in battle, it outlasted it as a system. And my discussion question for this is looking at the timeline from 201 BC to 146 BCE, do you think Carthage's downfall was inevitable after the Second Punic War, or could different political decisions have changed the outcome?
I think there were three things that I think it was inevitable. Number one was their, as you mentioned, their political system, and how it was set up more greed and protection versus protecting the the country itself. And number two, you hindsight, displays that now, but they couldn't see that because they were too blinded by what they wanted to protect and what they wanted to keep. Had they did that for him, again, we'd probably be talking about something differently. And also, too, with Hannibal, he wasn't just a military genius; he was also a statesman as well. You
Hmm.
know, when um, when he came back home and retired from the military, he was in charge of the finances, and so from the penalties that Rome had placed on Carthage, he was able to pay all of that back without even
Hmm.
increasing the taxes on the people of Carthage.
Right.
So he was he was very valuable, but they just couldn't see that. It took advantage of that, and as you just mentioned, that wasn't good enough for them. That wasn't good enough for them. Rome said, just don't start another fight with anybody. Don't break the treaty. Well, they couldn't
Right.
do that, and so they broke the treaty, and Rome came
Right.
stomping. And I'm of the mindset that Rome was probably very, very nervous that they did not want another Hannibal to come along because I believe they were very scared and very fearful that he could have possibly destroyed Rome.
Hmm.
And they didn't
Hmm.
want that to happen. They didn't want not even not even a smolder of a flame for that to even ignite, for anybody to get that possibility of thought into their head.
Yeah, I'm like Robert. I think I think inedible is pretty strong. I think cartridge, it actually rebuilt this economy, like Robert just said, and it became prosperous again through trade. But I would say that cartridge fall wasn't 100% inedible, but after 2001 BCE, they were heavily restricted. Heavily stacked. They had a lot of things stacked against them, and Rome's determination made them more destructive and and allowed things to happen the way they did. So um but that's how I feel like it Rome, Carthage did this thing by kind of reinvising itself, but yet again it wasn't inedible for them to fall. But the fact that they even provoked Rome, kind of added on to their destruction.
Yeah, man, I don't think it was inevitable. I think that with them having that rebound through
Hmm.
Hannibal, causing that
Right.
economic rebound, and Hannibal's political skills and his military skills,
Hmm.
I think if he was properly utilized in the right fashion, I think Carthage could have went two different ways. I think they could have become equal with Rome again and possibly maybe allied with Rome,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
they would have came back, and if they were organized and led by Hannibal, um, I think they actually could have taken over Rome.
Right.
But
Right.
Well, listen, they
greed is the I
they
mean,
absolutely went
greed.
after. Yeah, they sought Hannibal. He had to flee. Rome sought him because they were just that concerned about him. Even um, coming back into power. I mean, even as old man, there's no clear cut way of how he passed away, but they certainly were, you know, very aware and trying to. So he was a very powerful man, no doubt
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. His face was actually on coins, you
Mm.
know.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. That was
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
That
his
was.
strategic ability was unlike any.
Hmm.
I mean, Rome had. I mean, they had massive amount of people, and he used other resources besides his people. But again, like they talked about the elephants from Asia. I mean, the way he thought strategically and the numbers he came with. I mean, he wasn't as massive as Rome was.
Not at
Even
all.
Matt. Yeah, they even talked about how Rome was just kind of like and I say United States, but no matter the destruction, they just kept sending people and sending people and sending people. You know, but so that necessarily wasn't a strategic way in some way of how to defeat Cartridge, but through the numbers of the amount of people that they had willing to fight for them, that led to the destruction. So, but I think his strategic abilities, which are still somewhat used today in war,
Hmm.
man, it just lets you know how great he was.
I think the obvious. I mean, Rome was. I think Rome. It's very obvious that Rome was scared of Carthage,
True.
even after defeating them in war on the Second Punic War. And
Right.
I think that's why, because Rome wasn't usually they usually destroy areas. They
Right.
like to conquer it, take it over,
And enslave.
and but
Yeah.
they absolutely obliterated Carthage.
Yeah, they did.
I think it was
Yeah, they
because
did.
they were scared,
I
and
do
they
agree.
Hmm.
I do agree.
wondered how things could have turned out different, and
Hmm.
Yeah,
how
This is true.
how different the world would be if
that is
Carthage would
true.
have won.
That's true.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
true.
that's no doubt because Rome is absolutely well. Rome is has heavily influenced Western ideology and
Hmm.
government and political and things like that. So you're right. And as we see, man, as we're going through this, just from the short period that we have done this, how many points of have certain things been different? How the world could have been different now?
And when you
Right.
look at it, I mean, on a deeper level, um, I mean, the reason why Carthage fell was because of greed.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Because they weren't unified, and people worried about they were greedy. They weren't
Yeah.
unified, and
Right.
the old saying of the old saying, the root of all evil is the love for money is the root of all evil.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Let me ask you guys a question, maybe kind of tied to
There
modern
was a
time.
part in there. Absolutely, this is true.
Yeah.
You know, about uh, Agathocles, the one before Scipio Africanus, and how when they sent him to for Carthage. I don't know if it may have been the first one, first Punic War, and so he studied how they set up their
Hmm.
military, and realized that the generals that they were picked by the people, but none of them were battle ridden, so to speak, and so he surprised them by attacking them on, landing on their soil and burning their ships, and we either winning or we're going home, you know, uh, to what you're talking about, about greed and things like that. I thought that was a good statement as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask y'all. So, even in our modern sense, do you guys feel that our country is ran by greed currently?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's what happened to Rome too. I mean,
That is true.
Rome was a unified country, but as
Hmm.
they grew in power, they got greedy.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of, the United States and Rome is they're comparable. I know I see things and read things about that, but I just want you guys to get your point of view on just the greed aspect, because I think we're standing in the same position, even when it comes to the oligarchs, running our country or, running cartridge. I feel like that's what's running our country to this day.
Hmm. You just switch the names, but it feels like it's the same situation.
True.
Yes.
True. Yeah. And if you don't understand history, you really don't even get that it's almost repeats itself in a sense,
It does.
you know?
It does.
Yes, sir.
Just
I
why
really
they
enjoyed reading
come
Carthage
into.
and learning about
I
Carthage.
did too.
I really
I did
didn't.
too.
I've always heard about it, and they were like, I
Hmm.
always heard they were powerful, but I really didn't understand. I didn't know that they actually could have defeated Rome. I didn't know that they were that
Mhm.
powerful at that time.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, when you any movie that you've ever watched, if you have watched any with Rome or with Carthage, these were dark-skinned people. When you um, or light dark-skinned people, however you want to say, when you watch the movies, that's not how it's portrayed. When you think of Africanus, things like that. It's to me, I find that fascinating. The contrast into what we're reading and to what you see these days when it's referred to back then.
Yeah, I think
Right.
Carthage was a very mixed
Hmm.
city. I think they
Hmm.
had a lot of people in that area
Hmm.
because of the trade. That they were a
Right.
um, uh, trade state,
Hmm. Hmm.
and there was that was probably the place where like all the artists went to. I mean, they probably had a lot of think of it like a modern metropolis, because they had a lot of different culture
Hmm.
there. Because it was all about trade, so they were influenced by a lot of different things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I,
And
I think
there was no racism back then as well.
I was about to bring that up.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah.
No,
I'm sorry.
No, I was about to say the
Yeah.
same thing, Robert. Go ahead.
not until Christianity.
Hmm. No, it was just they exactly. And it didn't matter what skin color words it be,
Hmm.
an Italian living next to an African and an Egyptian. I mean, it didn't matter. There was none of that. They intermingled,
Right.
they intermarried.
Right.
You didn't matter. You became a Roman, and that's just what it was, or whatever the case may be. But there wasn't even any racism back then. And you're right,
Right.
because it wasn't until Christianity came
Right.
along.
Right. 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 And that's just crazy all by itself. Because growing up in a certain culture,
Yes.
that's exactly what we have to follow by on a daily basis. You know what I mean? And yet again, this was the very thing that brought destruction to those particular people or to us as particular people. It's ridiculous. Again, man, if people just took the time to read and comprehend this information, it could set them free. It really could
Sure.
mentally set them free. It's an amazing concept.
Hmm. Hmm. Because it's not something that was from the very beginning. It's
No,
something that is recent.
true, true. Yep,
And
yep.
look how powerful it is.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, yes.
I think it
Sad
was
face.
actually something that's been dying, and our government is what's actually trying to keep it or maybe not the government, but you could say the government's part of it because we have evidence of them controlling news media.
Right.
But that's really the only place where it's alive
Yeah.
when you really think
Yeah.
about it. And
Yeah.
on a global scale, everyday people, it's not really. It just exists in these echo chambers, and they seem powerful, but they're not.
Right.
Let me ask you this: you think it's to everything you just said? Do you think it's more of a Western ideology situation, or is it just or is it on a global level? You know,
I
you
think
think
they're
if you go
afraid
to
of unity,
absolutely.
so they want to keep us divided, and people are ignorant, and so they stay divided.
Yeah. But I think it's more westernized. I don't think it's global. Do you know
I
what I
think it's
mean? When you,
westernized because of Christianity.
yeah. Right. Right. Yes. Yeah. True. Yeah. I agree with that. You know, I mean, even in, we talk about, we've talked about masonry in our previous conversations, and masonry in the Western world is the only country that is segregated. Any other country is not, but it's segregated here. I get on Facebook and I see certain states or certain affiliations of just the Masons versus the Prental, and Masons won't accept Prental. I mean, it's just ridiculous, how we look at things now in the Western world. When you go to France and somewhere and you see a black Madonna and a black Jesus that the Pope is looking and giving some praise to, but here it's non-existent. There's nothing, anything of light or dark descent is automatically, a negative connotation, so
It's because the tradition takes deep root in religion.
it does. It
And
does.
the Southern Baptist and the Apostolic Pentecostals are the ones that really spread that narrative in Western society.
Hmm. Hmm. So that's another topic right there.
I mean, think about all the people that owned slaves back in the day. What religious were they?
Yeah.
They weren't Catholics. Most of them are
Right.
Protestants.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That's facts. That is facts.
That's right.
That's
Very
facts.
good.
Great
It's a great
podcast, guys.
conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was a good one.
Absolutely.
It was a good one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got that spotlight, King?
I
Haroon?
do. All right. So I do a spotlight for tonight. So the spotlight person tonight is Jonah Trumplar Mo Holland. Mo Holland. Okay. All right. I will put it on our social media page so you guys can take a look at it as well. So who she is. We don't again. I'm going to use the term light brown, but in this particular document I'm reading, it says white. Okay. So, well, actually, I'll just use and just read what it says. It says the white civil rights activist who risked her life fighting segregation in the Deep South, expelled from college for her activism, worked closely with the organization like the Student Nonviolent Coordination Committee, SNCC. Why this matters. Jones' story shows that the movement wasn't just about leaders. It was about ordinary people making extraordinary choices. She participated in sit ups, protests, and freedom rides. She was arrested multiple times and even placed on death row briefly due to false accusations. She stood alongside Black activists at a time when doing so could get you killed. Uh, uh, Key moment to highlight. The famous photo of her being attacked during a sit in became a symbol of brutality of segregation. It exposed the violent activists face simply by demanding basic rights. All right. Um, so, as closing, is what I'm willing to risk is what I am willing to believe in. That was a saying from her. What I am willing to risk for what I'm willing to risk for what I say I believe in. And if if we had more people who stood on those grounds like Jonah, man, this would be a lot better society. But she made a huge impact, not only for the Black society, but every society on this earth, every human being on this earth. And she stood for what she believed in, and she died for what she believed in. That's the spotlight for tonight.
Right on, man. That's pretty cool.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Very good. Great fellowship, Kings. Great fellowship, great podcast tonight. Great information all the way around. Listen, we encourage your likes, thoughts, suggestions, and questions and opinions. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Podcast Addict. If you can't watch the video, sure, if you're driving down the road, plug us in, listen to what we have to say. Listen to what we have to say. It's always good to get together, Kings, and do this every and I really enjoy it. Really enjoy the insight that everybody brings to the table.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We appreciate you.
Love you guys.
All right, love you too, bro. Till next time.